Okay, I guess I'm live. Hello, everyone. It looks like I'm just gonna wait for a little bit. So, I had a song request. Maybe I'll start with a song. I don't know if I'll start with that song. I think I'm gonna start with a different song. So, I'm gonna start with this song. Okay. That's enough Donna Summer. It looks like there are several people here. So let me just make sure that I have everything together. Because, of course, as we know, the top chat's in a separate window. And I'm going to start screen sharing the study. Just give me a moment here. And hello, 4 people, 4 viewers. If you want to join, the link is in the top chat. So let me just give me a moment here while I get my screen share going on. Why is this being silly now? Maybe I have too many windows open. Hold on a second. I do. This always takes a little while. Where is it? Okay. I don't know why it's not letting me share my I guess I could just share my entire screen. Alright, I guess that works. That looks ridiculous. Okay. Alright, so here we go. If someone comes in, I can't see the top chat while I'm doing this, but I will hear you come in, so if you come in, please say hello. So this is the Littman study, the one with so much controversy, the rapid onset gender dysphoria in adolescents and young adults, a study of parental reports. So this was given to over 200 people. It was 256 people. It was completed by parents. And she did a lot of work to make sure that these people were experiencing I'm sorry, their children were experiencing rapid onset gender dysphoria. So we'll just start from the top here. I've got a lot highlighted. Um, the onset of gender dysphoria seemed to occur in the context of belonging to a peer group where one, multiple, or even all of the friends have become gender dysphoric and transgender identified during the same time frame. Parents also report that their children exhibited an increase in social media and internet use prior to disclosure of transgender identity. So this is actually really big, and it's something that I think we've talked about a lot. How this is sort of an internet phenomena. Many young people go on experiencing probably what's normal kind of signs of puberty or other distress, as we'll see in the study. And they come on and they get all this information from YouTubers and Tumblr telling them that they're trans if they feel such and such a way. So this study does explore that kind of idea. Um, 90 question survey consisting of multiple choice, where parents reported, and they used websites, the three websites that they used, and of course this is a point of contention with transgender activists or trans rights activists. The recruitment was done on Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, and Youth Trans Critical Professionals. So a lot of the controversy about this study comes from that particular aspect, where they mined for participants in these three websites that are supposedly transphobic. So that was one of the main issues I think the TRAs had a problem with. 256 parent completed surveys that met the study criteria. Predominantly female sexed at birth, 82.8%, 41%, and it says AYAs a lot, and that stands for adolescent and young adult. So I'm just going to check back here really quickly to look at to see if anyone's in the top chat. Oh my god, this is so ridiculous. Oh, hello, good morning. Feel free to come in if you want to. That's the link. All right. So I'm gonna go back to this. Um, right. So 41% of the children that the parents were reporting on expressed a non-heterosexual sexual orientation before identifying as transgender. So that's not a majority, but it is quite a lot. Many of them had been diagnosed with at least one mental health disorder or neurodevelopmental disability prior to the onset of their gender dysphoria. So that's really interesting to me that a slim majority uh, already had some diagnosis of mental health. And as we'll see later, um, a lot of these clinics don't ask about previous medical history. Uh, in 36.8% of the friendship groups described, the majority of the members became transgender identified. Um, so, this is an exploration of how this is a social contagion. So let's click down. The most likely outcomes, all right, we've got they expressed a range of behaviors that included expressing distrust of non-transgender people, stopping spending time with non-transgender friends, still not a majority, but enough, about a quarter each here, and trying to isolate themselves from their families, that's actually 49.4%. That's huge. And, a lot of that is very similar to cult like behavior, where when people join this sort of kind of organization, they become isolated from previous friends and family. And only trusting information about gender dysphoria from transgender sources is 46.6%. Rapid onset gender dysphoria appears to represent an entity that is distinct from the gender dysphoria observed in individuals who have previously been described as transgender. The worsening of mental well being and parent child relationships and behaviors that isolate them from their parents, families, non transgender friends, and mainstream sources of information, are particularly concerning. Okay, and then we have the introduction here. Many of them had no history of childhood identity issues, experienced a rapid onset of gender dysphoria. Parents have described clusters of gender dysphoria outbreaks occurring in pre-existing friend groups. That's one of the most interesting things of this study. That it really does seem to be happening in clusters. There's even one story. If I would scroll down, we can see it. We'll get to that later. But it was basically, I believe, a PE teacher uh, came out as transgender, and then 4 of the students in the class also did as well. And this actually, not even just rapid onset gender dysphoria, but I've seen this story happen personally. I saw someone who previously was never even talking about this, knew this person for years, met another person who was transitioning and decided that it was for them. So I really do think this is partially a social contagion. And that's kind of what this study is all about. I'm going to take a break here for a second. Take a look at the top chat. Okay, we've got Saber saying stuff. Oop. See, this is really I can't get it to share my screen properly. Let me take a break for just a quick second so that I'm not completely, let me see. Let's see if I can stop that. Hold on. I really want it to do just the window where it shares the window. 9 people, hey. So let me check back to the Chop Chat really quick and see what's going on. Oh, that's your cousin's story too? Come in. Come in and tell me your cousin's story. I'd love to hear it. This is the link. That tell me if that works. It should. I hope so. What else happened here in the top chat while I was talking? Sounds exactly the same as anorexia. Yep, she compares it to that as well. 2008. These findings confirm the strong social influences on female adolescents in the US to be thin, sometimes using unhealthy behaviors to achieve this goal. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember. I guess I feel like it was longer than that, but all those pro Anna websites were out there, and they were really um they were scary. They would tell you how to lie to your parents. They would tell you certain tricks, things like that. So, yeah, if you wanna come in, if you have a story to share about, um, rapid onset gender dysphoria, I'd love to hear it. Let me see if I can get the screen share to work properly. Maybe I just have too many windows open, I don't know. It was working before I started this, so I don't know why it won't. Why isn't it Hmm. I know you don't wanna hear me talk to myself and get frustrated about why I can't use technology, but Mm. Hmm. 11 peeps. Hey, 11 peeps. All right, I guess I just have to share my whole screen, as annoying as that is. So, just a moment here. All right. Again, when I'm in this screen, I really can't see the top chat. So if you want to come in, feel free. And I'd love to talk to somebody. This is a lot to do on your own. All right. Anyway, um, right. They had no histories of gender identity issues. Their friend groups. Exactly. Parents describe a process of immersion in social media, such as binge watching YouTube transition videos and excessive use of Tumblr, immediately preceding their child becoming gender dysphoric. Yeah, Tumblr is a hell site. Not just for this, but I mean, the amount of disturbing material found on Tumblr. If you had told me that would have happened when I first saw Tumblr like a decade ago, I wouldn't have believed you, but it quickly became a place of disinformation and really gross pornography. Um This study was designed to describe rapid onset gender dysphoria and to generate hypotheses, including the role of social and peer contagion in the development of this condition. And I'm just going to read the highlighted bits until maybe someone wants to join me. Adolescent onset of gender dysphoria is a relatively new phenomena for natal females. In fact, prior to 2012, there were little to no research studies about adolescent females with gender dysphoria first beginning in adolescence. And she takes a lot of precautions when she made this survey, when she was constructing the survey, to make sure that these weren't children that had regular gender dysphoria, early gender dysphoria, as they say. Um, the management of adolescent onset gender dysphoria is more complicated than the management of early onset gender. Right, early onset. That means in early childhood. And that individuals with adolescent onset are more likely to have significant psychopathology. The presentation of gender dysphoria can occur in the context of severe psychiatric disorders, developmental difficulties, or as part of a large scale identity issue. And for these patients, medical transition might not be advisable. I mean, I'm of the stance that medical transition is never advisable. That's my personal belief about this. I don't think we should be giving children puberty blockers. I don't think we should give them medication. And I don't even believe in social transition. I do not think that we should tell children that they are the opposite sex um, just because they enjoy certain things that whichever. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Continuing here, the description of cluster outbreaks of gender dysphoria occurring in pre-existing groups of friends and increased exposure to social media slash internet preceding a child's announcement of transgender identity raises the possibility of social and peer contagion. And this is something that I thought even before I read this study. Um, it's if you've been on the internet enough, if you've been in contact, if you had a Tumblr, um, any of this sort of thing, you saw this sort of creeping in. Um, I'd say it was about 6 or 7 years ago when I first encountered the term cisgender. Um, and when I saw that, I was very confused, and I had to look at it. And I've said this a lot. It's a definition of feeling comfortable with the prescribed roles that society gives to men and women. And I've never felt that way, so I don't even know what cisgender means. Um, friendship cliques can set the norms for preoccupation with one's body image, and techniques for weight loss, and can predict an individual's body image concerns and eating behaviors. So this goes back to we're talking about eating disorders earlier. Earlier in this paragraph, it says peer contagion has been shown to be a factor in several aspects of eating disorders. So, yeah, your social groups are important, especially when you're an adolescent. Um, and adolescents, I think, more than anything, want to fit in. Uh, so this is um, good to understand when we're approaching this. In the past decade, there has been an increase in visibility, social media, and user generated online content about transgender issues and transition. And if you're familiar with any of that kind of stuff, if you watch, I don't want to even mention Riley J. Dennis's name in here, but if you watch that dude or any of the men that identify as trans, uh, they really push a lot of dangerous ideas. And then you have people like Uppercase Chase and what is it, Ash something? I forget her name. But they're propagating this whole double mastectomy using binders, that sort of thing. I'm against all of that, obviously. Um, On the other hand, it is plausible that online content may encourage vulnerable individuals to believe that nonspecific symptoms and vague feelings should be interpreted as gender dysphoria stemming from a transgender condition. Right. So kids who are going through normal puberty might be feeling uncomfortable with their bodies, go online, encounter all of this information, and deduct from that they are transgender. Um, Concern has been raised that adolescents may come to believe that transition is the only solution to their individual situations, that exposure to internet content that is uncritically positive about transition may intensify these beliefs, and that those teens may pressure doctors for immediate medical treatment. Advice promotes the idea that nonspecific symptoms should be considered to be gender dysphoria, conveys an urgency trend to conveys an urgency to transition, and instructs individuals how to deceive parents, doctors, and therapists to obtain hormones quickly. And as we see with some uh, articles written, and I also had that clip, um, people working at these gender clinics often just want to quickly get them in and out, rubber stamp it, give them their hormones, and send them on their way. Let me take a look at the top chat here. Hold on a second. Just going to switch back and forth. Stop sharing that for just a moment. Mm, let's see if we've had. Saber says, well, that was the point with Tumblr. They let people come and consider Tumblr the next frontier for years. Didn't regulate it, so it's full of pornography. Yeah, Tumblr is absolutely disgusting. It's a cesspit. The interesting thing about Tumblr is that there is actually a pretty large-ish rad femme community on there. So that's, I guess a shining light in the dark. Okay, 10 people are watching, but no one is commenting. Super fun. Again, if you want to join, this is the link to the Hangout. Okay, I'm going to go back to my screen sharing. Just a moment. I don't really know why it won't let me do just the application window. It was showing up before I started streaming, and then the second I started streaming, it, of course, decided it didn't want to let me do that. Okay, so sharing my whole screen again. Okay. Right. Obtaining hormones quickly. Yeah, so on I don't know why I didn't highlight this part. I must have skipped this page by accident. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times, just like all those pro-ana sites, there are uh, advice. There are many things saying exactly what you should do to get your hormones, instructions on lying, urgency to transition, vague and non-specific symptoms called signs of gender dysphoria. Um, Recruitment information with a link, right. So I said this earlier in the stream, but the recruitment information was posted on Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, and Youth Trans Critical Professionals. And as I said when I started the stream, this seems to be the major point of contention between the trans rights activists and Lisa Littman, the person who made this study. Participation was voluntary. It was all she took great pains to make sure that it was done properly and anonymously. Um, and parental indication that the child's gender dysphoria began during or after puberty. Okay, characteristics of parent respondents. So as you can see here, the majority are female. Um, and the majority of these parents were aged 45 to 60, and the majority are white. And the majority, ooh, I hear someone has come in.
Hello.
Hello, who's here? Sorry, I can't really.
Hi. My name's
Hello?
Cassie.
Oh, hi. How
Hi.
are you?
I'm alright. How are you?
I'm
I was
okay.
talking to you in the top chat.
Oh, great. Cool. Were you the person who said your cousin was
Yeah. Yeah,
uh
that's me.
are you comfortable sharing that story, or if you don't
Um,
want
I guess
to?
I don't really know that much about it. We're not that close.
Oh,
But
okay.
basically
So
like
your
he
cousin. Mm,
he was like never showed any signs of like gender dysphoria or anything until he got to college. And
mm,
first he started dating a girl who said she was a boy, and
mm.
then after they broke up he came out as trans.
Wow. Was it
Yeah,
hard for the family? Are they
I
doing?
mean, my parents are like uber Christian, um
Mm.
so but they're also like weird liberals, so they're like cool with it, but I feel like they're holding on to hope that he's gonna like come to Jesus at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how coming to Jesus would. I
Make
guess
you
you
not
could
trans.
just I guess you could just switch out one ideology for another.
Yeah.
It actually, what's really weird about that is a couple of the people that I know were, their parents were like really religious and like strict Christians. So they came from like not fundamentalist, but pretty rigid Christian households. So that's
Hmm,
interesting.
that is.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like people are very comfortable in their ideologies, and perhaps if they lose one, they need to find another one to replace it. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, like that
Um,
fanaticism almost like needs a
yeah, yeah, like the need to believe wholeheartedly in something.
right.
I'm not sure. I've never had it. I- I've never had that issue.
Right.
Um, so yeah, do you have any other things you wanna mention, or should I just get back into reading this out loud?
You can get back to whatever you're doing, I guess.
Well, if you have anything to chime in, please do, or even interrupt me. But what's interesting again here is that we can see that these people are pretty highly educated. The Not a majority, but over a quarter of them have bachelor's degrees or graduate degrees. So these are educated white people whose children have decided to do this. Parents' attitudes on gay marriage, most of them majority in favor. Belief that transgender people, and she put this in here to sort of safeguard herself, to say, it didn't save her anyway, but parent belief that transgender people deserve the same rights and protections as others, and the majority said yes. So, I mean, obviously, that question was added to safeguard from being called unfair and bigoted, but that will never save you from the transgender cult. It really doesn't matter. Anything that comes out against their dogma is going to be bashed. I don't know why I highlighted this part. Scrolling down. So here are some characteristics of the AYAs, the adolescent and young adults. As you can see, the majority are female. They are fairly not. It's not a majority, but 47.4% are gifted. And this is what I find really interesting. And I think if we were to probe further into these sexualities, we would find more links with Tumblr, because we've got 8.5% reporting as asexual, 36.8% reporting as bisexual or pansexual, even though I'm kind of pretty sure those are the same thing. 27.4% were gay or lesbian, and 35.4% were heterosexual. But are you on Tumblr a lot, Cassie?
Yeah. I got a Tumblr.
Yeah. So how long have you had a Tumblr?
Not too long. I honestly got it to connect with other radical feminists because I knew that there was a big hive on there.
Yeah, there are quite a few. I deleted my Tumblr recently, but I was on there for a really long time. And I noticed before the trans stuff, the pansexual stuff was happening a lot.
Mm.
And I'm personally I'm bisexual, and so pansexuality never like made sense to me. I was like, what does that even mean? It's
Didn't
like,
Miley Cyrus come out as pansexual? I wonder if that has
is
something
that
to do
true?
with it. Yeah, I think
I
like that a while ago, you know what I mean?
I
So that
didn't
might
even know.
uh,
That must
correlated.
that might have been it, yeah, but I just remember seeing, and then, of course, like the asexuals,
Yeah,
um,
I never really understood that.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but, if you're not interested in sex, I mean, I don't think it makes you oppressed. I think there are asexual people out there, but I don't know. I don't know if a lack of sexuality is a sexuality. Not sure.
Yeah, that's a hard one
Undecided.
to
What?
wrap your head around. It's a hard one to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it is, definitely. But I think, like, the bisexual, pansexual, and then you have, I mean, none of the rest of them are mentioned. There are so many. There's, like, the demisexual, and there's the one where I guess you're attracted to people's intellect. I don't know what that's called. Um
Platonic or something as Plato sexual, maybe.
There are so many. And I'm older, so as a 35-year-old person, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, gender dysphoria began during puberty, 48.8%, after puberty, 51.2%. So it's kind of an even split. Um, Belonged to a friend group where one or multiple friends became transgender identified during a similar time frame, 21.5%. Um, had an increase in social media or internet use, 19.9%, and both of the above, 45.3%. Neither or don't know, small percentages. Right. This is just her kind of going over her methodology. So this is the gender dysphoria in children, and we went over these in a different stream, but I'll read them again because gender dysphoria to me sort of just sounds like sexism. I'm not sure, but a marked incongruence between one's experienced or expressed gender and assigned gender of at least 6 months duration as manifested by at least 6 of the following, one of which must be A1. So that's why I have 1 highlighted here. So this is a strong desire to be of the other gender or an insistence that one is the other gender. See, they're using gender way too much here. I feel like it should be the strong insistence or desire to be the opposite sex. You know, I feel like that would clear a lot of confusion about this issue up. So they need A1 to be diagnosed with dysphoria as children. So did your cousin say they didn't have any sort of dysphoria, right?
No, not when he was younger.
Right.
Honestly, he was like, I wouldn't say like gayish, but he definitely didn't fit in. You know, he was like a
Right.
nerd.
Mhm.
Um, but he hung out with all boys. You know what I mean? I remember one time he got in trouble for him and a group of boys circled a girl and hit her with sticks, and it was like almost
What?
like a gang beating when they were children. And yeah, so
Oh my
he was very
god.
very masculine, I guess, like in that sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Played video
or
games,
maybe
liked Power
yeah.
Rangers,
Hmm.
all that stereotypical
Hmm.
stuff.
Right. I really wonder, I mean, so he met a person who was identified as trans, and then I really do think that that's what happens often. I mean, we often talk about how, like, pornography is also involved, but I think it's, um probably likely that, like we see in this study, like a peer group or someone that they date. In the case that I'm familiar with in my personal life, he was it never had occurred to him in the decades that I had known him. And then he met his sister's partner, who is a trans identified female, and I guess, like, they had some heart to heart or something, and he admitted to cross-dressing at some point in his, earlier life, um, and then was convinced that he was transgender. Even though if I guess, several decades ago, he would probably just be a cross-dresser. And I don't
Right.
have a problem with transgenderism, I'm just tired of them saying that they are the same as biological women. I mean, that's a big issue here.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So they've got to manifest at least 2 of the 6 indicators. So only 2 of these things out of 6 have to indicate, or I'm sorry, manifest. And they have to have A1 totally manifested. I feel like just 2 out of 6 isn't enough, but, um, exposure to friend groups and social media or internet content, including number of friends that became transgender identified in a similar time period as the AYA, peer group dynamics and behaviors, and exposure to specific types of social media or internet content. Participants were asked to describe outcomes such as their child's mental well-being and parent-child relationship since becoming transgender identified. So is your cousin doing okay with his parents? The parents are cool with it?
The parents are, I mean, he's like always been a favorite child, so
Mm.
they're totally supportive of him. But he has had a couple suicide attempts since transitioning.
Wow, so he has transitioned and
Not surgically, but yeah,
oh, okay, socially.
socially or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So
But yeah,
does he wish to go the surgery route? Is that his desire at this point?
honestly, I haven't spoken to him about it, so I don't know. But it
Mm,
doesn't seem like it.
yeah.
No one's talking about future plans or anything like that, so
Yeah, I guess they're just trying to take it one day at a time. I mean, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's really
yeah, I mean, it's not
difficult
good.
for it's really difficult for the families. And in some other articles I've read, the suicide or ideations of suicide don't really decrease after transitioning.
Right.
And in this study, it does talk about that a little bit. Um, that it's probably not entirely always the best route, transitioning, that is. Um, so they had some questions about how you cope with emotions, speaking of suicide. Um, and a lot of the answers were that they're not very good at coping with like strong or negative emotions. Um, Along with the sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria, the AYAs belong to a friend group where one or multiple friends became gender dysphoric and came out as transgender during a similar time as they did, exhibited an increase in their social media internet use, both um, right. So this is all it kind of repeats itself because I think that's just how these things are set up. I'm not a scientist. I studied literature. So this kind of stuff is actually really difficult for me to read. Um, and I had to power through this because the language is just so um, difficult for me. Are you in school or university, or did you graduate, or are you?
I've been in and out of college. I'm
Mm,
supposed to go back in maybe the spring for graphic design, but the last
okay.
couple times I dropped out because I didn't have the funds. So
Yeah, it's difficult.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I graduated a long time ago now, with a bachelor's in English, and I've been teaching English. That's what I've been doing. Um, All right, here's an interesting part. The AYAs who were the focus of this study had many comorbidities and vulnerabilities predating the onset of their gender dysphoria, including psychiatric disorders, neurodevelopmental disabilities, trauma, non-suicidal self-injury, and difficulties coping with strong or negative emotions. Would you say your cousin had issues coping with his emotions before that?
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
He was,
I would say the same. I would say the same for the people that I've known as well.
mm,
Um, just and the person I've been was closest to that this happened with, he was really depressed. Like a year before he announced this to me, he would say how depressed he was all the time. And I was
mm,
like, I really think you should go talk to somebody, like get help. This is not what I meant by that.
yeah,
Um, so the majority had one or more diagnoses of psychiatric disorder. Um, and that's just scary. To me, that just means that, it's possible that these other things like depression and anxiety, which are the top two, we can see a chart later. Those are the top two. These are not being treated. And instead, it's like, okay, here you are. Here's this like cure all. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
Here's some hormones. You're finished now. Like, we're not actually treating like the root cause of the issues, I think. I didn't highlight any of this table. At the time they came out, most were living at home. The average age of the announcement was 15.2 years of age. Again, we're talking about teenage girls here. Most of the parents answered that their child's announcement of being transgender came out of the blue without significant prior evidence of gender dysphoria. I'm going to take a pause here and see if there's anyone else in the top chat really quickly. Stop! Do you see what happens? It's like, it's just like insane. I don't know why it won't let me share the other one. Recommendation. Cyber says the only sexuality that should be recognized is autogynephilic sexual orientation, a love of themselves as a woman, which competes with heterosexual orientation. And she also says masculinity, anime, and gender dysphoria. Oh my God. So was your cousin into anime?
Oh my God, so into anime, like his whole life.
Oh,
Yeah.
what is that all about? I
Caught
mean,
him watching anime porn before.
ew.
Yeah.
Ew. Oh no. You know, there's actually a long history of anime with like body switching roles. Like, I don't know. Did you ever watch anime?
The only anime I've ever watched was a lesbian one, and it didn't have anything like that in it.
Yeah, one of the this is an older one, but it's called I think it's Ranma One Half, where there's a male character who switches between being a male and a female, like
That's
all the time. Oh, and there's a giant talking panda in it too. Um, just
furry. Yeah.
just to round it out. But that was from like the early 90s. So, and I feel like the Japanese have been playing around with this idea for like a long time. And the pornography, I think it's called like funtari or something. And
I
I,
know about hentai.
that's hentai is actually a like an overall term,
Okay.
weirdly enough, and actually they will call each other, like if they're like saying like you're a pervert, they'll be like, oh, hentai desu, like calling calling each other perverts or whatever.
That's so
um yeah. So but, I think it's Funtari. I think that's the one where it's a female-bodied-ish person with a giant hulking penis. Yep. So, I think there's a huge overlap in, like, this sort of porn-sick anime, culture, but that's, I think, mostly with the men that do this. This study is more about teenage girls, but again, I think a lot of these things can carry over,
yeah.
um, um, because we're all exposed to the same media on Tumblr and things like that. Like everybody has access to the same information. Whether or not they're seeking it out is another story, but
Right. But if
I
you're
mean,
in those social groups, you might just come across it. You know what I mean?
exactly, yeah. Social groups are a huge factor here. Online social groups as well. Um, these kids will isolate themselves and just cultivate an entire world online, and instead of spending any time, uh, in real life with friends and doing things. like that, they cultivate an entire online existence and seems more important to them than real life, which is a disturbing trend. And I think we'll probably see more of it with like the rise of virtual reality.
Mhm.
But I don't know. It's things like that sort of freak me out. Um,
Yeah. I don't know. I remember when I was a teenager being a bit depressed, and I can imagine if I had like some world to fall into that would just kind of like propagate it, that
right?
depression, like
Yeah.
I probably would have. I can imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, the internet when I was much younger was all just like message boards. Um,
Yeah. And
it,
AIM.
yeah, that's all that was happening. So and yeah, I mean, I liked some anime. I mean, obviously I did end up in Japan, but I am leaving. But you know, I think it's, adolescents again, like if they're not fitting in, excuse me, in real life, then the internet is a place that they can turn to and find some solace. And that's why all of this propaganda, this transgender propaganda, like really freaks me out. And this study sort of points to that. So let me try to look at some of the other. Let me try to do that screen share again. It's gonna look ridiculous again. I, I don't know why. Let me. Nope, it still won't let me do the window that I have open. All right, so share my entire screen. Ah, okay. Okay, so here's what I thought was really interesting. We can look at this breakdown of the mental disorder that some of them were suffering from before this announcement. Anxiety, depression. So the majority is anxiety or depression. And some of them, 37.5% said none of the above, but we've got a pretty high percent of anxiety and depression, which I find disturbing. Like those things should be treated first. And then I feel like some of this might fall by the wayside. Um, Traumatic or stressful experience prior to the onset of gender dysphoria. Again, 48.4% said yes, 36.1 said no. Some others said they don't know. Types of trauma, family. Some were gender or sex related. I'm not sure. That's kind of vague. But yeah, family trauma. So types of trauma could be anything from like maybe your parents are getting a divorce, maybe your parents are just fighting all of the time. There's lots of kinds of family trauma. I found this to be really interesting, the non-suicidal self-injury. So I guess just cutting, that probably means. But not a majority, but 45% reported doing that sort of self harm. And when I look at these surgeries, I feel like they are kind of a natural end game to self harm. I mean, what's the ultimate in self harm? Well, like, I mean, I don't like to say mutilation, but I guess that's what it is.
Mhm.
Um, the ability to handle negative or emotions productively, the majority was extremely poor. So they're not very good at dealing with emotions. They're not very good at coping. Um, Lots of social vulnerabilities. They had social anxiety. The majority, again, social anxiety. So these girls in this study, again, the majority are girls, were experiencing a lot of social anxiety. And that's, being a teenage girl is not fun. It's it's definitely not. If someone told me, "Here's a time machine, I'll give you a lot of money to go back to being a 16-year-old," I would refuse. I would say I would say no. Because, social anxiety, lots of girls experience that for like various reasons. Um, a history of being isolated also, and they had difficulty interacting with their peers. So pretty high percentages in each of those categories. So this is just really sad to me because these are girls who they feel weird, they feel awkward, there's something they don't feel like they fit in. I felt like that too. That's why this is particularly disturbing because perhaps if I were an adolescent now, who knows? Maybe I would think that I was transgender. I mean, I've never I didn't do femininity, and when I did it, it was awkward. I never did it very well. Um, so I don't know. It's disturbing. I think a lot of girls feel like this. It's hard to fit in. We're probably not gonna get through this in, like, the time that I wanted to. I think I've been already doing this for, like, an hour. Uh, alright. Um, let's see. What else did I wanna share? Announcement came out of the blue, majority. So the majority of parents are reporting that this seems like it came out of the blue. Littman does later say there's, like, a little kind of conclusion paragraph where she's covering all of her bases and she's saying, even though that the parents say this, it might not be true. That's why we need more research. Basically, the conclusion of this study is that more research needs to be done. Um, and that's really hard when you have a group of people who are very adamant uh, to the point of harassing
Right.
scholars
They
online.
don't even want this to be out. Why would they want more?
Right? So, but I mean, what's good is that I think a lot of people uh, came out in support of her, people in her community. Um, oh, this is an interesting one. 69.2% are say yes, that the parent suspects that the child first announced the identity that they were using language that they found online. Later on in this study, um, parents reported like it sounded like they were reading from a script. All of the language sounded like it was lifted from someone else. My child didn't sound like themselves.
Mm.
Um, so I thought that was interesting. And it just reiterates the idea. I mean, I had this idea, and I think lots of us have for a while, that this is very much a social contagion, because it doesn't make sense. Why? I believe it's a 4,000% increase to the Tavistock Clinic within the last, I want to say it's 10 years, but it could be even shorter. There's a great uh, graph on, I believe it's Transgender Trend. If you've have you been on that website? It's pretty good. It's like really
A couple
comprehensive.
times. I don't really frequent it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a parent. So
Uh, yeah.
but I do care about teenage girls and it is affecting them more than it was when I was growing up. This wasn't we weren't talking about this when I was growing up. We just
No.
became we just became like weird kids that were, we would like listen to music and talk about music. Pre- pretty
I was
harmless,
like, yeah.
pretty harmless activities. Yeah. Uh lots of like kind of gothy or punk scene kids, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was
Like
playing the
emo.
goth stuff. They do say that trans is like the new goth, don't they? I've heard that.
I think some people say that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is based on some kind of aesthetic, I think. I'm not
Yeah,
sure what it is. Seems like blue hair is popular. I don't know.
right. The different
Um,
hair colors and the crazy clothes.
yeah. Um, they they have a high expectation that transitioning will solve their problems in social, academic, occupational, or mental health areas. A slim majority said yes to that. Um, but as even with your personal story, it sounds like it sounds like it just makes things worse. Because
Mhm.
I really truly believe we're not treating the root of the issue for these people who are going through this kind of thing. I really think if we looked at their depression, their anxiety, any of their other comorbidities, that it would be more helpful than just slapping that transgender label on them.
Right. Distracting from the real issue.
Mhm. Um, oh, so we've got some personal stories. I'm gonna skip down. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. Just get here we go with some personal accounts, which I thought were interesting. A 12-year-old natal female was bullied specifically for going through early puberty, and the responding parent wrote, as a result, she said she felt fat and hated her breasts. She learned online that hating her breasts is a sign of being transgender. She edited her diary by crossing out existing text and writing a new text to make it appear that she has always felt that she is transgender. A 14-year-old natal female and three of her natal female friends were taking group lessons together with a popular coach. This is the story I was telling you earlier. The coach came out as transgender, and within 1 year, all four students announced they were also transgender. I mean, that's crazy.
That is
Um, um, a natal female was traumatized by a rape when she was 16 years of age. Before the rape, she was described as a happy girl. After the rape, she became withdrawn and fearful. Several months after the rape, she announced that she was transgender and told her parents that she needed to transition. That one's just heartbreaking. So is the first one, actually, the one who was overweight and got bullied. Um, of course, I didn't highlight the male. I don't care about that as much, but um, a 14-year-old natal female and three of her friends are part of a larger friend group that spends much of their time talking about gender and sexuality. The three natal female friends all announced that they were trans boys and chose similar masculine names. After spending time with these three friends, the 14-year-old natal female announced that she was also a trans boy. The majority, so in a, a lo- two of these stories are about the social contagion aspect, and the other two are about girls being traumatized for their female bodies.
I've
Um,
actually heard of that happening. Of my ex's sister, she's in high school, and her friend came out as trans after an assault, basically.
yeah, they
So
want
yeah, it
to
definitely
escape.
happens.
Yeah, they want to escape the body that. Um,
Yeah, that was traumatized.
mhm. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't think this is the answer. Um, it's just heartbreaking. This whole
Yeah, it
study
really
is really very sad. Um, One parent, in response to the question about if their child had very high expectations that transitioning would solve their problems, elaborated, very much so. She discontinued antidepressant quickly, stopped seeing a psychiatrist, began seeing gender therapist, stopped healthy eating. She stated none of it, minding what she ate and taking her medication mattered anymore. This was her cure, in her opinion. So, that's actually super cult-like behavior. Um,
yeah.
thinking that this is just going to be like the solution to all of the problems that you're facing. and stopping all of the things that would probably help you, like a healthy diet or taking your antidepressants. I mean, I have other issues with antidepressants and SSRI inhibitors. Like, that's a whole another can of worms. But yeah, and you cannot just stop taking those. Um, you have to kind of slowly like wean yourself off of them. So if this young girl just decided, I'm going to stop cold turkey, the fallout would be pretty intense on that. Um, okay. Let's see. We're only on page 15. All right, let's look at some more tables. And then I'm going to check back. I'm stuck on this screen, guys. I'm sorry. I can't see the top chat if people are talking. And I don't even know how many people are listening to us right now. Cuz all I can see is the screen of the study. So social group, 69% were part of a social group. So that's the majority. Oh, this is interesting. The order of coming out compared to others in the friendship group. So the first is a minority, but the second is very high. So second in the friendship group to come out as transgender is 43.7%. That's pretty high. So there's one person who actually might genuinely be suffering from gender dysphoria, and you know then they talk to their other friend, and their second friend is like, yeah, I'm on board, let's do this. And the third friend is 27.7%. So I found that to be pretty interesting. I also think it's interesting here, supposedly popularity increased. So these are kids, right? We were saying like they're socially awkward. It's difficult for them to interact with kids. But the second that they decide to come out as transgender, they're getting new, respect and popularity. Because I guess in schools, transgender kids are very much protected. That's what this study indicated. Um, I don't know. I haven't been in school in a long time, but I think, with what we see online too, like these people are definitely protected more than any other group, because all of a sudden they're the most oppressed group of people. Again, the majority of these people come from educated parents and they are white. So they're not, they're just socially awkward teenagers, really. Let's see. Yeah, see, he great increase in popularity. Being trans is a gold star in the eye of other teens. Increasing status also became untouchable in terms of bullying in school, as teachers who ignored homophobic bullying are now, see, so they don't care about any other kind of bullying. They just more so are all, it says, are now all at pains to not be hot on the heels of any trans bullying. It's like the hot thing, like, don't bully the trans kid. But apparently, anything else goes. Like, just, yeah.
So these kids are like thinking it's gonna make them popular and untouchable, basically.
Right. So it's very appealing.
Yeah, I can
It's,
see the appeal.
yeah, for the socially awkward teenager, it's super appealing. I'm gonna close this for a second, see if there's anyone. It's like infinite windows. 13 viewers. Let me look at the top chat. Who's here? Oh, I'm leaving. Online SJWs. Uh, here's the link. I'm leaving. If you want to join, please do. Oh, hey Meredith, what's up? She's listening on her way to work. Okay. How long have I been doing this? An hour. All right. I really want to try to make it under 2 hours. So let's let's go back to the screen share again. If you want to click in, excuse me. I can't even talk anymore. See, after an hour, I just fall apart. But if you want to click in and join, please do. I'd be more than happy to talk to people. I like asking people questions. I'm a weird at hosting. All right, so back to my entire screen share. Let's see what else I wanted to share here. In the other case, the parent relayed that their child thought none of the original friends would understand and expressed a strong desire to get out of the culture that if you are cis, then you are bad or oppressive or clueless. And that's another thing we see online, right? Especially on Tumblr. um, cis is like an insult. Being cis is like not cool. It's like it's very strange. Do you ever see that on Tumblr?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I
Like, yeah.
I noticed it didn't take like full um hold of Tumblr until I'd say like 6 years ago was like when it really started to like get bad. Like and then even like now it's just to the point where no one wants to be cis. Everyone has to have like a weird sexuality or
Yeah, you have to have some kind of qualifier
yeah.
if you're good. Yeah.
Tumblr is a weird place. That's why I had to get off of it for a while. But I just was using it for photography. I didn't have any idea that I would start seeing this kind of stuff, but of course. All right, what else is going on? And one respondent described that their child expressed relief that medical transition was never started. So this is a person who like got over it. Theme groups targeted. Groups targeted for mocking by the friend groups are often heterosexual and non transgender people called cisgender. Sometimes animosity was also directed towards males, white people, gay and lesbian, right? People, aromantic and asexual people, and TERFs in scare quotes. One participant explained they are constantly putting down straight white people for being privileged, dumb, and boring. And as we know from the study, that these kids are white. They're mostly white.
Yeah, it's not boring that gets me though. It's like, how do you know I'm boring just because of these things? You know what I mean? Like, there's
Right.
nothing else in life or something.
Yeah, like sexuality or transgenderism is
Makes
like
you
the be all end
interesting.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a way for these kids to feel like they're interesting.
Yeah.
Another participant elaborated in general, cisgendered people are considered evil and unsupportive regardless of their actual views on the topic. To be heterosexual, comfortable with gender you are assigned at birth and gender assigned at birth and non-minority places you oh sorry and non-minority places you in the most evil of categories with this group of friends. Statements of opinions by the evil cisgendered population are consider phobic and discriminatory and are generally discounted as unenlightened. So that's someone wrote that in I guess in response to one of the questions. Theme individuals targeted. So also directed mocking towards individuals in their lives, such as parents, grandparents, siblings, peers, allies, and teachers. One participant said they call kids who are not LGBT dumb and cis. It's, the more I read this, the more it really does just sound like a cult. Like, if you're a Scientologist and someone who isn't a Scientologist, like, that's a SP, that's a suppressive person.
Mhm.
Um, right? So, anyone who's not transgender, even though we saw before, even supposed cisgender lesbians and gays are like dumb and boring. So, it's anyone who's not trans, basically.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't really even matter about your sexuality at this point. Theme behaviors occurred both in person and in online settings. Oh, this one's really rough. Theme examples of behaviors. My daughter called me a breeder and says things. Yeah. And says things in a mocking straight person voice. Can you even imagine that? Like, I can't. Uh, being this person's mother. Her friends egg her on when she does this. Another parent offered if they aren't mocking cis people, they are playing pronoun police. Yep. And mocking people who can't get the pronouns correct. So I, they often say, like, oh, the pronouns trigger my dysphoria, right? Like, if you misgender or whatever. But I
Yeah.
feel like part of it is to, like, put someone in an uncomfortable position. Like, part of it's to just prove how dumb anyone who's not trans is, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely.
um New vocabulary includes cis stupid and cis stupidity. And a fourth participant described they assume anyone that is critical about being transgender or even asking questions is either ignorant or filled with hate. I guess that's me. Um, seem to focus on feeling as though they are victims. They seem to wear any problems they may have real or perceived like badges of honor. But all talk is very victim centered. And finally, another said they passionately decry straight privilege and white male privilege while emphasizing their own victimhood. I mean, this is the issue with identity politics, generally speaking. Um, we aren't talking about class anymore. And that's really what we need to do. And we need to bring it back somehow because identity politics aren't going to get us anywhere. Um, Uh, they get each other riled up by convincing each other of their persecution by these perceived wrongs, right? So again, I think the misgendering thing, I think they're being many of them are being disingenuous when they say it triggers dysphoria. I think some of them maybe it genuinely does. But for others, it's just a way to put people in this very uncomfortable position and to feel like they're being persecuted and to make people be the sort of oppressor when in fact many of these are their peers or their parents or concerned people. um uh Right. So the majority exhibit an increase in their social media. Um, exposure to internet content, how to tell if they are transgender, 54.2%. How to order physical items, including binders and packers, without parents finding out, 26.7%. Even though that's a quarter, that's still scary. There are and a lot of the people who are giving these kids advice are adults. This is, they're grooming children. That's what's another scary aspect to me of this. Um, there are adults online telling kids how to get hormones, like illegally, or they're gonna help them. They're gonna send them to them. Um,
Yeah, that definitely shouldn't be legal.
not at all. Um, Another advice is that if their parents are reluctant to take them for hormones that they should use the suicide narrative to convince
Oh my
them.
goodness.
Yeah, that's 20.7% reported that, so a little under a quarter. Um, yeah, I mean, this is also a tactic of abusers. Abusers will say, you know, if you're in a relationship, they'll be like, "Don't leave me. I'm going to kill myself." Right? This is
Yeah.
very abusive, and the fact that this suicide narrative is being pushed to get hormones, and that this study says that 20.7% of the parents reported this. um, it's just we can see that this is being perpetuated online. We can see that these kids, they might be depressed. They might have, in fact, they are depressed and they have high levels of anxiety, right? But but they might they may or may not be suicidal, and they might be using the suicide narrative just to get their way, which is abusive. What else? We're only halfway through. Well, I don't want to read the whole thing. I really like the graphs, though. I think they're very helpful in understanding this. Um, Mental well-being since the announcement is worse. And you even said with your cousin that, you know, he's
Yeah, that
thought
he's
about.
definitely gotten worse.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
see it too, when we're on Reddit or like Gender Critical or something like that. We'll see people who come on and they ask for help sometimes. You know, they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm feeling this way. Like, you know, I don't know if I'm even transgender or this and this and this. And it just seems to exacerbate the existing issues that we saw that they have, which number one is depression, number two is anxiety. So kids who are already feeling like social outcasts, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, who think that this is a ticket into popularity, into being bullied less, it still doesn't seem to help them even after they socially transition.
Right.
Um, Parent-child relationships are worse, slim majority, 57.3%. Range of interests and hobbies unchanged, 36.5%, but much narrower, 22%. So that's a little less than a quarter, but I mean, that's still pretty high that their range of interests and hobbies like decreases. Um, because they become consumed with this. That's, you know, it becomes everything that they think is it's a salve. It's going to solve all their issues, even though, as we can see here, that it most likely won't. Um, I believe my child experienced what many kids experience on the cusp of puberty, uncomfortableness, but there was an online world at the ready to tell her that those very normal feelings meant she's in the wrong body. And as we saw earlier, some of them experience trauma in their female bodies. And they just want to escape that.
Mhm.
Um, the trajectories of most AYAs were not consistent with the narrative of discovering one's authentic self and thriving. Um, yeah, they got it. Just I really think that this is a trend. It's part social contagion, part trend, part cult, and it's very dangerous. And it's not helping them. I don't think this is actually helping people. And the adults that push this on kids, um, they, you know, they really need the kids to say like, this is going to help. This is the only option, because it gives their stories more credibility. Like it gives Bruce Jenner more credibility if a bunch of kids are saying the same thing. But as we saw in that other story, a girl literally scratched out her diary to make it sound like she was always transgender. So, um, let's see. Let me check the top chat really quickly. We're gonna have to go through that a million windows thing. 13 people. And it's just you and me chatting away. Mostly me just reading to you. Um sorry. Uh Nobody is cis, says Saber. Miss Michelle, I've seen trans definitions where just being gender nonconforming means you're not cis but trans. Right, yeah. A tomboy is all of a sudden trans. Meredith says, I acted like a Satan worshiper so people wouldn't bully me. It was popular in the 80s. Yeah, I mean, acting like acting tough, right? Acting tough is a way to make kids like leave you alone. I don't know what I was doing. I just was weird and I I kind of tried to stop caring. I didn't get bullied too much. I think kids were a little freaked out by me. So that's like where the goth or the punk thing comes in, where, like you want to just kind of scare them off a little bit.
Right. Just don't even approach me.
Yeah. I'm too scary. Don't come my way. Um, let's see here. Anyone else? Sounds like a way they can wear a mask. That's interesting. Lieben says she only just got home and she's eating and she might join if she has something to add. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. How long have I been? One. Okay. We're going to wrap it up soon here. That'll be like, we'll hit the 2 hour mark. All right. Back to the giant screen share of doom. I really hate it. I don't know how to do it any other way though. Um, Excuse me, a total of 63.8% of the parents have been called transphobic or bigoted by their children for one or more reasons. The most common being for disagreeing with the child about the child's self assessment of being transgender, recommending that the child take more time to figure out if their feelings of gender dysphoria persist or go away. See, these parents sound like they care. I don't know if you saw that video of the woman that was on NBC News, that quack lady who was saying like, "Oh, these kids they're being told that they're not loved and they're not, supported." That's not even true. These parents are merely being like, "Well, maybe we should wait." Maybe we shouldn't,
Just need to be cautious because they do care.
yeah, um, and they're like, "Well, where did your self-assessment, like, what else? Expressing concerns for the child's future if they take hormones, right? Like, this stuff is gonna sterilize their kids, of course they're gonna be concerned." Um, Calling their child by the pronouns they used to use. Again, that pronoun thing, but we saw earlier that they would, like, make fun of people who can't get the pronouns right, so I don't
Yeah.
know if it's actually triggering dysphoria or if it's a way to make people feel bad. Um, Telling the child that they thought hormones or surgery would not help them, recommending that their child work on other mental health issues first, calling the child by their birth name. How weird must that be if you're a parent, especially a mother, and you give birth and you name this kid and now they
Yeah.
just yeah, I feel like it just would blow my mind.
Yeah. I have a
Um,
6-year-old
mm,
and I can't imagine calling him anything but his name, you know what I mean?
yeah, the cousin.
No, no, I have a child, so
Oh,
yeah, I can't
okay.
imagine like if he told me to call him something else, I would not be able to do it. You know what I mean?
You're like, "No, I pushed you out of my body. That's I get
Yeah.
I get
I've
to
been
name
calling you
you.
this for this many years. Like, I'm just used to it, you know?
um, yeah, I mean, when my friends, um, I have 3 actually, 2 women and 1 man, uh, and when they change their names, I'm like, "I can't do it." Like,
Uh,
I don't really talk to them anymore. Um, the one woman contacted me recently, but I I don't want to call her Caden. I knew her like we grew up together. Like you know, I'm not going to say her other name, but
yeah.
um
No, I have a friend that we used to call Peaches in high school, and she went back to her real name, and I cannot stop calling her Peaches. It's
uh so yeah, changing names. Here we go. Right, the anxiety and depression, as I said, those are the 2 big ones that these people already suffer from. Parents have been called transphobic or bigoted. Distrust and isolating behaviors. Slim majority express distrust of information about gender dysphoria and transgenderism coming from mainstream doctors and psychologists. So, because there's so much of this propaganda out there, and there's this whole narrative of only trans people can talk about transgenderism. And so this embeds a distrust of anyone who's kind of going again against the dogma of transgenderism. Tried to isolate themselves from their family. Again, that's really cult like behavior. Expressed that they only trust information about gender dysphoria and transgenderism that comes from transgender websites and or transgender people and sources. And those sources are not reliable. They're really not. If you really look into all of this, the more you peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, the more you see how these transgender kind of so-called experts are unreliable. And I mean, we have people like Zinnia Jones calling themselves experts. Like
mm,
Zinnia Jones makes pornography. Like I don't
right.
understand how these people have any credibility, but like news outlets interview them all of the time. It's insane. It's complete insanity. They're withdrawn from their family. They told other people or posted on social media that their parent is transphobic, abusive, or toxic because the parent does not agree with the child's assessment of being transgender. I keep clicking that by accident. Um, let's see. Ooh, a siren. It's a Japanese siren. Um, I
Sounds a
live
bit more pleasant than our sirens.
It's not one of the crazy ones. Sometimes it's like 3 alarms at once, and sometimes it's just that. So I think that's just an ambulance. I live really close to a fire station. Um, did the therapist, physician, clinic staff explore issues of mental health, previous trauma, or any alternative causes of gender dysphoria before proceeding? The majority is no. So this is interactions at clinics. This is, I thought, really interesting because this just indicates that the people who are running these clinics do not care about previous medical history. They don't ask. They just want to push these hormones on people. Um, did the therapist, physician, clinic staff request any medical records before proceeding? A slim majority at 49. Oh, that's not a majority. It's almost a majority. 49.5% say no. So the people at these clinics are not even requesting medical records.
That's crazy.
I know. um, did the did AYA misrepresent their history to the doctor or relay their history accurately? A majority say the parent is reasonably sure or positive that their child misrepresented or excuse me, or omitted parts of their history. And again, that personal story where we see that girl crossing out things in her diary just to fit her new narrative um, bolsters this. So, I think we're going to be wrapping it up here soon. But I really did want to share that, like, a lot of these clinics do not ask for previous medical history. Um, For parents who knew the content of their child's evaluation, 71.6% reported that the clinician did not explore issues of mental health, previous trauma, or any alternative causes of gender dysphoria before proceeding. And that 70% report that the clinician did not request any records. I just don't understand. I don't understand how gender clinics can call themselves anything to do with medicine if they're not requesting these documents. Like that's
Right.
just
You
it's
can't
not
treat someone you don't know anything about.
exactly. Um, Here's a personal story. When we phoned the clinic, the doctor was hostile to us, told us to mind our own business. Our family doctor tried to reach our son's new doctor, but the trans doctor refused to speak with her. The pediatrician gender specialist did not return calls or emails from the primary care physician who requested to talk with her about my son's medical history before she saw and treated him. She disregarded all historical information provided by the family and primary care physician, did not verify any information provided by my son at his first visit, even after being provided with multiple other historical sources which differed significantly from his story. It's sick. I feel like these people, the people who are running these clinics, um, it just seems like a money-making scheme at this point when I hear things like this, when I read that. Um, yeah. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up. I don't know if there's any other table I might wanna share. I really recommend, if I mean, I shared the link to this study. It's still out there. If you have time, you can read through it. Um, I don't know if there's another table I wanted to share, but I think the most important parts I did share. These kids are already suffering from depression and anxiety. Their medical histories aren't necessarily a priority for the gender clinics to look at. Um, all of the information that they're getting about being transgender is found online from very unreliable sources. And it forms this sort of cult mentality of pushing anyone away who disagrees with the dogma. Um, yeah, I think my voice is getting tired. Uh, transition steps, they changed their hairstyle. The They change their style of clothes. They want to be called a new name and they ask for different pronouns. Um, yeah, I think I covered what I wanted to with this. If anyone has any questions or they want to come in, um, that would be fine. But yeah, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it all.
I mean, I didn't even get through the whole thing, but
Yeah.
Um, it's a
I mean,
pretty
I haven't read it yet, but I'm definitely gonna check it out after this.
yeah, it's 41 pages long. It's I'm going to read her hypothesis. I think that's where I'll wrap it up. She has two emerging hypotheses. So, number one, it's a social contagion, a key. I'm sorry, let me start over. Social contagion is a key determinant. Oh, determinant. I can't even read anymore. Social contagion is a key determinant of rapid onset gender dysphoria. However, it is plausible that the following can be initiated, magnified, spread, and maintained via the mechanisms of social and peer contagion. Number one, the belief that non-specific symptoms, including the symptoms associated with trauma, symptoms of psychiatric problems, and symptoms that are part of normal puberty, should be perceived as gender dysphoria and their presence as proof of being transgender. Number two, the belief that the only path to happiness is transition. Number three, the belief that anyone who disagrees with the self assessment of transgender or the plan for transition is transphobic, abusive, and should be cut out of one's life. In other words, gender dysphoria may be used as a catch all explanation for any kind of distress, psychological pain, and discomfort. Yet, more than a third of the friendship groups described in this study had 50% or more of the AYAs in the group becoming transgender identified in a similar time frame, a localized increase to more than 70 times the expected prevalence rate. So, her first hypothesis is that this is a social contagion. She also has another hypothesis that it may represent an egosyntonic but maladaptive coping mechanism to avoid feeling strong or negative emotions. A maladaptive coping mechanism is a response to a stressor that might relieve the symptoms temporarily but does not address the cause of the problem and may cause additional negative outcomes. So she's saying it's a maladaptive coping mechanism for some of these people. Um, they have a history of dealing with difficult emotions. The drive to transition might be used to avoid dealing with mental health issues. The risk factors, mechanisms, and I'm not actually going to read that highlighted bit. But anyway, so those are her two hypotheses. Um, Lastly, if the above hypotheses are correct, rapid onset gender dysphoria that is socially medicated and or used as a maladaptive coping mechanism may be harmful to AYAs. Again, AYA means adolescent and young adult in the following ways. Number one, non-treatment or delayed treatment for trauma and mental health problems that might be the root of, or at least an inherent part of, their issues. Number two, alienation of them from their parents and other crucial social support systems. Number three, isolation from mainstream non-transgender society, which may curtail educational and vocational potential. And number four, the assumption of the medical and surgical risks of transition without benefit. So, yeah, I think she's on to something. She really does stress that like more research is needed. Again, I agree with that. Um, but I don't know how that might happen with such a powerful group of people behind all of this. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Oh, I'm losing my voice. Let me get a little glass of water here. So, yeah, that's an overview of the Littman study. I hope everyone has enjoyed listening. Um, Sorry, I'm getting some water. And it's nice to talk to a new person.
Yeah, it was cool to come in.
Yeah. And it was thank you for sharing your story about your cousin. We saw a lot of similarities between him and the other people that I've also in my personal life have dealt with concerning this issue.
Yeah.
Um yeah, it just seems overall I mean, I think we should have an entire chat about anime, but I I think that's a different chat.
Yeah.
Um, and I really would have to like look. I only really remember the name of that one called Ranma One Half, but yeah, I can't remember the name of the others that like there's lots of body switching. I mean, this has been a theme in anime for a long, long time and manga. So it doesn't surprise me that there's an overlap. Um, yeah, so thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah.
And and anyone in the top chat, let me click over there to see if anyone said anything else. Uh you'd think these clinics would want to put checks so they don't get lawsuits later. And Saber says she thinks they've secured themselves. I honestly think like what's going to start happening is these kids are going to grow up and we're going to see a lot of lawsuits. I really think that's probably what's going to start happening in the next I hope it's 5 years, but it might be about 10 years. Um I don't know. Not sure. I want to be optimistic. But it seems like it takes people a while to get over to the side that we're on. Um,
Mhm.
which
Yeah, it's a process.
yeah, I think it is because there's so much of this propaganda everywhere, you know? It's, on TV, on social media, and
Yeah,
you
nobody
talk
wants to be hateful, right?
yeah, everybody wants to be accepting. You don't wanna especially if you're, like, anywhere near the left. Um, I'm assuming are you in the United States?
Yeah, I'm in Maryland, right near DC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if you were, like, anywhere near the left on the United States, like, even broaching this topic is scary. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, for me, I always felt kind of in the back of my mind, like, this doesn't make any sense. So, but I've said this so many times. I put it somewhere else because but then like 3 people in my life, who I've known for many years, um, decided to go down this path, and it made me kind of come back to it and question it some more.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Well, do you have anything to add? I'm sorry. I should ask you some more questions. I don't want them to be too personal though.
That's all right.
Do you have do you have any like how did you find out about radical feminism or gender critical feminism?
Um, honestly, I randomly joined a Facebook group and I didn't know what radical feminism was. So it was like the cuddly radical feminist group or something. And
Cuddly.
yeah, yeah. That was like my first ever Facebook group that I've ever been in. And yeah, I mean, I was a little taken aback, honestly, but I stayed in the group just to see and just over the years I've come to agree with most of it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Well, what were some of the things that you found to be like difficult at first to like
um, honestly, mostly the trans thing because of my cousin. I just
Mhm.
didn't know how to feel about it. But I definitely I liked the anti-porn thing and anti-prostitution stuff.
Mm.
And you don't get that at all in liberal feminism, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think we should even call that feminism anymore.
Yeah.
I
What a
don't know
bad
what that
word.
is. It's like a commercialization of well, it's a backlash really.
Yeah.
So calling itself feminism. But I mean, I think there were a lot of like in the 90s, a lot of like sort of there's always been a rift, I think, of like these kind of sort of sex positive so-called
Right.
feminists and more radical feminists. Um, but they don't have their arguments suck. They don't,
Yeah.
like when you look at pornography or you look at prostitution, like that is blatant exploitation of women.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to argue against it. I feel. And then they do that whole choice thing.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think it really holds any kind of weight.
Yeah. They do this whole like if you take a picture or get a celeb's nudes, like that's objectification, that's wrong, but if they put them out themselves, it's fine, you know what I mean? Like there's any difference in the minds of the men masturbating to it, you know what I
Right?
mean?
Exactly. Exactly. There is no difference. Um, it's exploitation either way. Oh, um, really quickly, did you see that the cover? There's been a lot of talk of this cover of that Cosmopolitan magazine of can't remember. She's like a plus size model.
Ashley Graham?
No, 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 not Ashley
That's like the
Graham.
only one I know.
No, no, no. It's like recently. But some people are like I guess it's like the new wave of body positivity. I thought that went
Oh, I
away, but
think I have seen that actually, where she's like basically in a pinup outfit, but she's
yeah,
a big girl.
yeah, and I keep trying to tell people like it really doesn't matter what size the body is. They're still
Mhm.
using her body to like sell you stuff.
Yeah.
This case a magazine. So I always find these kinds of like surface level things. Like everybody's really into body positivity again. I thought that was kind of went by the wayside, but it came back like
Yeah.
with a vengeance, it seems. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's kind of a surface level. It's like not really getting to the root of the issue. Um,
Exactly.
so I don't know. I feel weird about that. I feel very strange about that magazine cover because
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, well, this is promoting like an unhealthy lifestyle. But I mean, I've
I
had
don't know about
friends.
that.
Hmm.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. Like I have had friends who've had I forget what it is, but certain um
Like
it's not
conditions.
yeah, condition, thank you.
Yeah.
Certain conditions that, like, they really can't help their weight gain at all. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
or
like thyroid issues and
exactly.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, or they'll be on some medication that makes them gain weight.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
I
I
used to
really
compete in races, and there were always bigger bodied people in races, and they compete just fine. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It doesn't really, you can't really tell someone's health by looking at them.
exactly. I think there was also a Huffington Post article recently about what you just said, like you really can't tell how healthy a person is based on their size.
Yeah.
um so I don't know, it's a weird thing that I'm like, well, you're not paying attention to the real issue, which is they're using her body to sell you magazines.
Yeah.
And every
Now
time
you
I
made me join the conversation.
oh really? I made you.
Yes, see, I told you I would join if I have something to contribute.
Okay. Well, please contribute then.
See, now you've made me join the conversation.
Hey,
See,
don't pin
so,
this on me.
I am so critical of the modern body positivity movement. I think it's terrible. And actually, yes, you can generally tell someone's health by looking at them. And it's not just their size. I mean, it's a bit like how we can spot a man from a mile off. It doesn't matter if he's wearing makeup or whatever. And just like we can do that, like there are certain telltale signs about people's health. And the thing is, the trouble with this modern, I'm emphasizing this modern health at any size movement, which is a big thing, which a big part is a big part of the body positivity thing. So
Yes.
we're not talking body positivity as it started, people with disabilities and such like not being put down because we're crying out loud, right? We're
Mm.
talking quite specifically, and incidentally, her name is Tess Holliday, I think, that
Yes.
we're talking about. We're talking about morbid obesity. I mean, we're not talking about people that, have a few pounds too many. We are talking about that is not healthy. And looking at someone, of course, you can tell. Imagine the strain on the body, on the organs. It's I mean, look, I'm a medical scientist. Like I don't play games with this stuff. I have seen too many bodies from the inside that look like that.
Wow.
It's like I've seen this stuff. I know what it looks like. Seriously, it's not healthy. And the thing is, medication, yes, medication can make people gain weight, absolutely, right? However, like this is a big thing. There is so much moving away from taking personal responsibility for what's going on with you and your body. That small number of people with medical conditions is that small number of people with medical conditions. The vast majority of people you're seeing who are going on and on about, oh, I'm being discriminated against because my doctor told me I should lose weight, it's better for my health. No, they're not being discriminated against. It's that same a narcissistic attitude and victimize, like this whole intense victimhood. Like seriously, the main reason why people become morbidly obese is because they eat too much and they eat the wrong things, and they're not moving enough. It is a fact. And all of this, oh, I eat so little. No. Whenever people like that lead food diaries, right? And when you actually look at what people are eating, like, it's very simple math. If you put more calories in than you're using up, you will put on weight. And it is not healthy. I'm not talking about people that, are a bit, you know,
Her
above.
body is definitely different from the friend I have who has like a thyroid condition.
Yeah. And like I said, there's a couple of people that have the actual, the illnesses and things going on. But as a whole, like someone like Tess Holliday on that cover, leaving aside the fact that like I just seriously critique women's magazine, those sorts of magazines
Yeah,
and
can
their
we just
portrayal of.
stop buying these
Sorry,
magazines for
yeah,
real?
yeah. I mean, they are terrible on so many levels. However, quite
Yeah.
specifically, a Tess Holliday who openly talks about no, she doesn't have any, thyroid issues and stuff. She's not healthy. I get so angry about it because the thing is that takes away from the people who actually are affected by illnesses, medication, and such alike. And it's just I get so angry when people refuse to take responsibility for their health, for their bodies, their actions. And I think it's really unhealthy. It's like as in mentally unhealthy. And I
Mm.
think that's that saying, healthy body, healthy mind. And I think there's a lot to it. So I'm obviously not talking about people with specific illnesses, right? Let's just clarify that. We are not, whenever we talk about things like that, generally, we are speaking in general terms. We are not looking at, very individual situations. And
Mhm.
I also think from a feminist perspective, like it takes away your freedom if you are self-inflicting something. Like it's not healthy for any person to be morbidly obese, full stop. And truth be told, it doesn't even matter if the cause is an illness or not. It is not healthy. So then the cause, of course, is a major factor. And of course, no, I'm not saying you should run around pointing your finger at people or anything like that. Let's just, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we really, really, that there's just something about sort of all sorts of social movements in the last few years that have been very heavily social media driven. And it's just total removal from reality. And it's just this.
Well, they're really image driven, aren't they?
Yes, it's the image driven. And it's also, that's what you were talking about earlier, this intense victimhood. Like, I'm a victim here. I will not, no matter what it is, it's never my fault. It's not something I've done. It's everybody else. And that makes me so angry. You know?
Yeah.
It's
I can
to
tell.
Me, sorry, I
That's okay.
like
Don't be sorry.
to me, from the logic, right? This refusal of responsibility. Seriously, these sort of heavily social media based sort of social movements, right? Like a lot of them, to me, is a replacement religion. Because it's that same sort of, very intense behavior. You have your cultish mantras, all of these things, right? And just like in the past, people would, rather than taking responsibility and saying, hey, I really messed up here, I did something wrong or whatever, they would say, oh, the devil made me do it, right? And so it's this pushing away of responsibility. And so now, rather than saying, hey, you know what, I am just not eating as healthily as I could be, as I should be. And you know what? I totally get that. I mean, seriously, give me a tub of ice cream and leave me alone. I understand these things, right? But instead of saying, you know what, I'm not eating healthily, I'm not living the sort of lifestyle that my body would perhaps like me to do. No, now it's a case of, oh no, of course I'm healthy, and anybody that says anything else is all evil and fat phobic and hates me. Does that remind you of anything as far as the logic goes?
Yeah.
It's just,
But
it's
maybe I should link you to this Huffington Post
sorry.
article. I didn't read it yet. A friend of mine had put it on her Instagram because she's the reason I'm thinking about this is because of this friend, and she's really into this this move. I don't even want to call it a movement.
It is a movement, sadly.
Yeah. This line of thinking. And I mean, I get it because she's not unhealthy. She's not the same as a Tess Holiday.
This is what I'm differentiating,
she is a bigger woman. But she's really athletic. She does a lot of like circus type stuff, which is
acrobatics stuff.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And she's really strong, actually.
Yeah.
But she's a bigger person, but she's not a Tess Holiday. I mean, Tess Holiday
is morbidly obese.
Like that's
full stop. Yeah. This is what I mean. I'm not talking about people that are simply, bigger or actually athletic,
But
because
they're part of the I think they're part of it, like they're the ones who are like, even because they're just like a little bit bigger, like they feel like a kinship or something with the rest of the people in this.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I just, I get so upset about it. It's just, like I said, things like body positivity, it's an excellent thing. It's important to not feel awful about, yourself, your body, to not have people put you down. Especially when you're in a position where you really cannot do anything about it. So, illness, disability, all sorts of things, right? Medication, there's a whole long list of things. It's just that I really think it's terrible when it gets co-opted.
I'm not sure how we can protect things from being co-opted.
I don't think we can protect them, but I can definitely complain about it.
Well, I like that you came in to tell us how you really feel about body positivity. And I do think it is like super image based, and it, like I said, I think it's kind of a shallow thing where it's, there's one thing where you're like, oh, I'm happy with my body and I'm okay with how I look, and but healthy at every size, I do get concerned about that, especially when, I mean, obesity is a really huge problem, especially in the United States. I don't know about Germany.
It's increasing, but it's still, you don't worry, the US is still well ahead.
We're still kicking ass.
We're working on catching up. We're trying, don't worry, you've inspired us. We're working on catching up.
Oh, great. Saudi Arabia is not too far behind because we've exported all of our fast food out there and they're super into it.
Ooh, nice, yes.
Just letting you guys know. I had a friend that worked there as a teacher for a while. And he had to leave because he just couldn't. Actually, the level of misogyny was just so intense, and he's one of my more sensitive male friends. So he had a student that said, if I ever saw a woman driving a car, I would want to shoot her.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia is
so there's that. But I think back to the body positivity, it does get worrying when morbid obesity is such a epidemic in the United States, that we're putting. But I think this was also like a UK cover, but of course the whole world has seen it because that's what we're living in now. We don't, everything is global, almost everything, especially crappy magazine covers. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's that's the thing. It's what one of the things that makes me sad about the way the body positivity movement has developed also, apart from just the medical side of it. I just get angry about that, but like it makes me sad because it's being sold to people as part of, surprise, feminist liberation,
I know.
because
that's my friend.
So terrible. It's like, oh yes, look, now you too can be a worthless sex object. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
See, fat people can be objectified too. Wow, look at us being all equal. Yeah, that's so terrible.
I know.
And this is my friend. That's why it's been on my mind, because she has recently become one of these kind of body positivity feminists, and I'm fairly certain she's probably on the transgender bandwagon too,
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know because I haven't spoken with her about it. I haven't been. I'll see her soon, actually. So maybe this is a primer for me to
actually
approach her.
That's actually a big thing. Like for me, I have I have a lot of friends and acquaintances whom I know through feminist work and activism, for many, many years now. And like they've always known me as the one who was a bit skeptical about the whole thing, but it's so, I actually have a few people, like generally I'm very, very outspoken about anything and everything that goes through my mind. Like I do not care if it suits people or not. But this one subject, the gender critical aspect. Yeah, how are you dealing with that? Like, have you guys lost friends or anything like that? Because for me, like, I really do, like, we're talking, for me, there are a couple of like quite prominent people, and it's really driven a wedge between us, like sisters, women whom I've campaigned with against sexual violence, all sorts of things, and now this subject, and it really breaks my heart, and it's something that I really struggle to deal with, actually. And it's resulted in me, just with one or two people, in actually not being as forthright, just because I don't want to lose these people in my life. Do you guys have that at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm not open with my family about it because of my cousin. I don't know how they'd feel, but I am open online. And when I first came out, I had like an old childhood friend get really angry with me and unfriend me. But that's pretty much all I've gotten so far. The rest of my friends are, maybe they're not on board, but they're not gonna not be my friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, see, with me, I'm mostly offline, and I open my mouth offline,
Right.
and I really I've always been outspoken, and I have always taken the approach of I just don't give a damn. So I'm very lucky with that. I know there's a fine line between bravery and stupidity, and I know I do often cross it, but you know, I'm very lucky like that, I suppose. But yeah, even me, just because these are, you know, women who mean so much to me, and I could cry when you know I hear them repeating our favorite mantras and such alike. And yeah, it's yeah, that's a tough one. So.
Yeah, I have personally, I've been in Japan up until this point, so I haven't interacted face to face with any friends that this might come up. And I would rather do it in person. I don't want to do it. I mean, I don't have a Facebook. Um, I don't have Tumblr anymore. I've pared down my internet usage pretty dramatically. But yeah, I mean, I want to talk about it, and actually I was a little heartbroken because I was in New York over the spring for a wedding, and I have these two friends, this a lesbian couple, and I really wanted to tell them what I had been reading lately, you know, because actually this is somewhat new to me. I'm kind of a newbie.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to like be like, "Oh man, I read all these books and like they really like blew my mind." And I saw like all of this trans literature on their bookshelf, like Julia Serrano and Janet Mock and all of these people. And so I didn't bring it up because it felt weird. I was
Yeah.
like, "Ugh." And I mentioned it actually to a different friend of mine, and she seemed kind of all right with it, but she was also living in a house with two, or at least one transgender person, and on their bathroom was a sign that said, like, all genders welcome. I'm like, why is this necessary in a personal house? This is an apartment.
Yeah.
Like, why would you? All right. So, but she was pretty, like, receptive-ish. I had just been telling her what I was reading, but
Yeah.
but she, you know, but then on the way home, she put on this, like, terrible song that she's like, "You've been into second wave feminism. Here's some new feminism," and it was, like, a bunch of trans people screaming. And I was just like, "What? No." Um And so, I mean, I just tell people what I read, I guess, and let them try to decide what that means. But I really do wanna talk to my one friend, the body positivity feminist, um, about this because we are very old friends, and, I will be seeing her, like, very soon. Um and I'm a little afraid, but I feel like we can have at least a conversation about it, and maybe it won't I don't think it'll destroy our friendship because, you know, we've known each other for I mean, I don't know.
I really don't.
Mm.
I don't, and I guess I try to be diplomatic about stuff and like
Yeah.
listen. I mean, I brought it up when when one of the people who I'd been talking about came out as trans. I was telling a gay male friend of mine about it, and he did that
Mm.
line where it's like, women have all sorts of different experiences. Every woman's experience is different. I'm like, yeah, but this dude isn't a woman. Like, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
So I don't know. People are very entrenched in this
Mm.
ideology.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I have a lot of friends that absolutely do not play along with that, but they aren't like it's mostly lesbian women, but like they're just but a lot of them are older and
mhm.
basically, they're at the age where they're just not in the scene, as it were, so much. So they just kind of they have opinions on the matter, but like they're not active in anything. So they're not active feminists or anything like that. So I'm very lucky in that I do have people where I can just complain about the matter. When you're just sitting with friends and you just complain.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like when we're talking in like feminist circles and such, or political circles, like absolutely not. Actually, I recently had a very big fallout on one of those matters. So yeah, I'm very anxious about those friends. So yeah.
Yeah, I was never an activist, so I can only imagine how this is. I mean, it's the perfect Trojan horse, really,
Mm-hmm.
to tear apart the feminist community that's already been established. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
me coming at it from like an outside. I don't.
No, it's true. I was actually just saying this to Cyber last night, actually.
Mm,
Exactly that. So basically, in particular, those of us that are activists or have been activists, like we're basically being forced to ignore or sideline a lot of the things that are actually so important. This woman-centered activism, because we're having to put all of our energy into just defending against this onslaught. And yeah, it's causing a divide and conquer. That's exactly what's being done.
yeah, and it came from the top, and it
Mm.
trickled down, and um, I'll probably do. I'm actually reading. I started reading. What is it? Transsexual Empire.
Mm.
So I started reading that. So I might do like a review of that.
Who's that
I don't
by?
know. Janice Raymond. Is
Okay.
it called Transsexual Empire? I think it's called that.
Yeah.
Janice G. Raymond.
Yes.
Mm. So I
Yes,
started.
the transsexual Anna Janice Raymond. Yes, I found it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm reading that right now, and it seems it's still relevant, and it was written like in the 70s. Well, the print edition or the edition I'm working out of is from the 90s, but still, that's like 20 years ago now.
Mm.
Um, and it's sad and scary that it's still so relevant. But I've
Yes.
already made like a bunch of notes in the foreword. But I mean, I don't know. I think for me, I mean, I'm probably going to come out pretty publicly because I'm also writing a lot of jokes and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about doing some comedy with it because it is absurd.
Ooh.
It is very absurd to me. The whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. The whole thing is like living in some absurdist play. Like,
Yes.
what
It
am
is.
I
It is.
like? I feel like I'm just like waiting for Godot or something. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yes,
Um,
that's exactly how it feels.
yeah, and it's like the whole world is not the whole world because we have 11 people listening to us. So, um,
but yeah, but it's true. The liberals don't want to make people feel bad. They don't want to feel like they're discriminating against people. But there's a difference between having rights and taking rights away from other people to
Yeah,
get them. And I think
exactly
that's what,
that.
people don't understand. And people also don't understand how important language is to lawmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my major issues with it. Like, we cannot change the definition of woman. And speaking of that, did you see that billboard in the UK? We're gonna wrap this up really quickly though, because I gotta go to bed. I gotta teach junior high school girls tomorrow.
Oh gosh,
Um, yeah, but
teenage hormones from hell.
it's the last day, but it's been tiring. And it's my last teaching gig maybe for a while. We'll see. Um, but so this billboard with the dictionary definition, woman is adult human female, was removed after
No.
pressure from transgender rights activists.
Yeah, but
Uh,
in the UK, some dude who dresses in his idea of female a few days a week got a prize for being a woman. So I'm just so not surprised. Bah.
yeah, no. And that's the same thing with this Littman study too, the one that we were covering in this
Mhm.
chat, because it was like these transgender rights activists, I don't even like calling them that. Um these MRAs basically.
Yes, it's exactly that.
Um
MRAs.
yeah, they just first of all, you've got Haley Heartless, who's like uh calls himself a dominatrix, and like, you
Uh,
know, I mean, they're all like sexual deviant fucking perverts. Like, I don't understand why a medical journal would kowtow to them. Like, I can't, I know why, but there's something in my brain that like won't process it. Like,
yeah.
I just can't get it. What's going on with Otherkin? I'm like, I'm looking in the chat. You're like
Oh,
typing
it's
away.
because Michelle was saying not everyone identifies as a person. They are people who think they're cats, and this is a phenomena called otherkin.
Oh yeah, that's part
So
of
I
that's one of
just
my
gave it a
jokes.
name.
I can't tell you my joke on I don't want anyone to steal it, so um but yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to raise awareness in my own way. I mean, I've never been really an activist. I'm kind of an artist actually.
Ooh.
More of that type of person, but I do read do read a lot.
Mm.
We talked about that. However, it's almost 11:30 here, and I've been doing this for like an hour, 2 hours and a half, but I do really appreciate you coming in with your, full steam on the on
You just have to
the
give me the right topic, and I will
yeah,
just
the
come in
right
and complain
topic.
about
Well,
it.
you know what? Yeah, I think we should revisit, body positivity. I wanna do some more, research or something about it first.
Mm.
Because that's kind of like how I like to come into things. Because I have a
Mm.
weird feeling about it, but I don't know what my weird feeling means.
Mm.
I'm
I'm
like
sure
that with
you'll figure it out very soon. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's how
But
I felt about transgenderism too. I'm
yeah,
like, I feel this is weird. I don't understand.
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
But now you also know how I became an activist, incidentally, because like I have this temperament, and I just get annoyed about. I come into a situation, I see it, I get annoyed about it, and I've always taken the approach that if I can complain about it, I can do something about it. And
Love
that's
it.
actually
I love it.
how I ended up becoming an activist, because like I will just get annoyed about things, and if there's anything that can be done about it, I just get up and do it because it annoys me. So it's actually just that.
Well, I mean, I think, that's a good motivator. Being annoyed can help you be motivated,
True.
It's
True.
it's fine. So, yeah, again, I'm gonna wrap this up now. Sorry, ladies.
Well,
I'm like, I gotta work tomorrow. It's my last day of work, and then I have a week left in Japan, and then I'm done.
Sleep
So,
well.
thank you so much. And Cassie, right? Cassie.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming and
Yeah, it was cool.
supporting me while I'm reading through that study. All right. So I'm gonna click back and end that on the all right. All right. So bye everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Stopping broadcast.